Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today, as you can probably tell, we're looking back at some of my old work when I was working on my BFA for illustration. And I just want to talk a bit about the overall life lessons that I learned from going to college. I know that like every artist has an opinion on whether going to art school is worth it or not worth it, whether they win or not. And I think very much it all depends on the person, which is what most people say. But for me, knowing how I worked before and after school, I know it was an absolute necessity. But I'm going to talk about that and the things that really helped me. But I found that at the very least before school, I did not work very hard. I didn't study the things I need to study, and I was not very aware of that. But after school, at the very least, I became a lot more introspective of my work process and the things that I was prioritizing and the things that I was really neglecting. And I think that just going through that process of really being scrutinized for the way that I work and for the work that I was putting out there, it made me become a lot more aware of it, which has been monumental in me improving and being able to become a better artist and find the things that will make me a better artist. So I think these are all just pretty big life lessons that again, you don't have to go to college to learn at all. But for me, I was at a weird place where I was really struggling with art at the time, honestly. It had been a dry spell of like almost a year and a half, which was really long for me. Before that, I was always so excited and passionate about art. But for this time, I was feeling really, well, honestly, it might have been closer to 2 years where I would work, but I couldn't get past almost any sketch at all. It was just, I would draw an eye and it wasn't working for me, and I felt so frustrated, and I would put it away. So I would try, but I would never succeed at drawing anything almost more than just a head. It seems crazy to me at this point that looking back, I ended up going for an art program still at that point, knowing that I had barely drawn for that long and that I was struggling so hard. But I had always desperately wanted to do art and to love art. So that desire was still there. It's just my desire to actually draw wasn't. And I was really struggling with that at that point, with who I was and what I was supposed to be doing. So I still, honestly, it was kind of blindly, I still followed the path that I had planned before. And I'm very grateful for that. But I pushed myself and I ended up going to get a BFA program, or getting into the BFA program. And that was absolutely changing in the way that I worked. Immediately, I had to start working. There wasn't this, okay, my mind isn't enjoying this, or I'm not really liking this piece. It was, if I don't work, I'm not going to have something to show, period. I'm not going to get a good grade. I'm going to fail this class. I'm going to lose all this money. And immediately it became real. And immediately it was out of my own head and out of my own hands. And it was just time to create. And it forced me to start working every single day and to stop thinking before I'd even started that it wasn't good enough, because it was going to be good enough and it was going to be better than nothing. So the first lesson I definitely learned was that any work is better than no work, and that I can absolutely get into my own head. I see that now and I can see evidence of it, and I can remember that point when I got past it. And because I remember that, and because I went through such a huge thing in my life at that point, I'm able to recognize it now and correct the course and make sure that I'm still staying on drawing and I'm still forcing myself to study and to learn and to keep working rather than stalling and stagnating. And a small side note, this artwork, I'm not sure about how it fits chronologically. It's definitely not comprehensive of all my stuff, so I'm not really sure where most of my stuff ended up. But yeah, I tried to categorize it by the classes and the projects that I could remember, but it's really fun to look back at it and see what things used to inspire me, or story ideas that I was developing at the time that never really came to fruition. But being able to see it gives me a lot of nostalgia for my old work and for the things that I used to care about. And I like that. I like being reminded of things that I might have forgotten along the way, and to be able to come back and revisit it, especially when it comes to things that are inspiring for me, because I find that a lot of times I'll go through dry spells of what I think is propelling me to create art. And this is nice. It's a good chance to be able to see things that maybe at the time I was really interested in, but I didn't necessarily have the skills to make it happen as well as I would like. So So this is really beneficial for me. It's nice to look at the old stuff, but I do want to talk a little bit more about school and about the things that I learned and about motivation. But yeah, I think that my biggest takeaway really was going from a time where I had no structure as far as when I created or what I created or how I created, and in the end not creating anything almost, to going where I absolutely had to all the time on a schedule, a lot of work. It was a huge wake-up call immediately. It showed me that what I was doing was absolutely not enough if I wanted this to be anything close to professional. And honestly, this can be extended well beyond if you're looking at wanting to be a professional artist or not. If it's something that you're passionate about and you want to get as good as you can, a lot of these life lessons are things that are really helpful for achieving that, to being at that point. And it's not something that's tied to being able to say that you're a professional or wanting to work on it that way. But having assignments that absolutely had due dates, that completely changed the way I looked at my art and how I created. Like I said, even after school, having that set up, I had like maybe a week or two where I fell into this like open abyss where I'm like, I don't know what to do. I have all this freedom again. And I slacked off and I didn't create anything because I didn't have that structure anymore. And then I remembered that that's exactly where I was at before I went to school, and I hated that feeling. So I gave myself a very strict regimen of when I created work and how I put it out there and how I made it happen. And that was honestly a huge part of what YouTube was in the early days. It was me getting used to working and putting my work out there. Actually, I started towards the very end of school, so a lot of some of my earliest videos are actually from the end of my college days, but it was very helpful in being able to give myself structure. It was almost like having an assignment. Like YouTube was the class and I had to put it out there. And I kept at it for years now, actually, where that was my structure. And that is so necessary for my own personality and how I work. I tend to, if I don't have an external structure, I don't get things done on time. I procrastinate. I don't do enough work, and then it kind of falls apart. And I think that's one of the things that I probably hate the most about myself, is my inability to give myself structure and to have that motivation. But at the very least, I have learned on how I do work that way naturally and how I can fix that when it comes to wanting to be better, the tricks that I can force myself into so that I do create, because I feel much better when I'm productive and I'm creating. So being able to give myself these external requirements for how I work and how I put it out there has absolutely been a lifesaver for my years after school, being able to still create and to still put things into reality. I have the structure. And I think that's a big thing, is that at least for me before my college days, that would have been a huge lesson to learn. And it's something that is necessary going forward for me too. And for anyone who's wanting to be able to be a professional or loves art and isn't creating enough, it's about structure, and it's about creating this requirement for you to keep working. And once you have that external source or that thing that you've forced yourself to follow by a schedule, it's a lot easier to make yourself draw when you don't feel like drawing. And then suddenly I do feel like drawing after I've started something and it's working and it's exciting. So the motivation for me comes from having a required structure. And sorry, this is so rambly and probably hard to understand. It's a lot of things that I've thought a lot about since getting out of school and during school. And I'm never very articulate when it comes to explaining things that I'm really passionate about. And work ethic is something that I feel very strongly about because I was so terrible at one point in my life. And I feel like I at least am making ground on getting better at that and being more aware of where my work ethic becomes a lot weaker and how I can push myself. And I think in a lot of ways, it was becoming honest with myself about how I actually work. There were points where I wanted to convince myself that no, I do so much work. I work so hard. But really, when I was in school and I was looking at what other people were doing and the amount of content they were creating or the quality of content they were creating, I clearly was not stacking up to that. And it was a huge wake-up call that I had really been kind of lying to myself. And this is after I'd been in school a little bit, where I had gotten back into creating more, just not enough. But yeah, I've really tried over the last few years to be as introspective as possible and to figure out how I work and how I can best improve how I work, how I can make myself happier with my process, more impassioned with what I'm doing. There are all these things that I'm always constantly juggling and trying to be aware of. And it's not something that I do now, but I'd actually really like to get into more of an involved type of planning and journaling so that I can get a lot more of those thoughts out of my head and down on paper, because it's getting to a point where I feel like I rethink quite a bit of stuff without necessarily making it as concrete or as actionable as I would like. So I think moving into a direction where I'm thinking about these things and actually making changes to how I work is going to be a lot more beneficial in the long run. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about making better plans and better lists and moving forward to a place where I can feel a lot more connected with what I am creating and not just with the fact that I am creating. And the piece that I'm actually showing you right now, this assignment, this was so incredibly helpful. This entire class was extremely helpful, but he taught it in a way that was very, very well directed to using figure drawing in different tools like animation or graphic novels, which is what I'm still interested in but have not made happen yet. But for this assignment, we had to draw 50 figures, and I think there were more requirements for it than that. I don't remember exactly what it was. And then we had to take a certain number of those. I think it may be 10 of them. And we turned them into characters and we gave them outfits and stuff. But it was really super fun to work that way. And it's a great assignment for a lot of people. If you're looking for something that's fun and engaging for figure drawing, this is a great thing to do. But this came after weeks and weeks, well, months, a couple months of working on so many figures. I remember that class. We had to fill so many sketchbooks up with figure after figure after figure. And that was the point that I became much more aware of how to get better and what points I absolutely need to start working at reference, which is pretty much everything. I definitely struggled with anatomy before this class, and this one, it opened my eyes to a lot of the things that can help me moving forward. So I think really the biggest takeaway I took from that was that I can't get better at something if I'm not practicing it. So I need to practice it a ton, and I need to study what the actual thing looks like. And that is it for today. I really enjoyed looking back at the old stuff and getting new ideas for what I want to do right now for my new pieces. It's actually kind of a big point of inspiration for me when I do look back at my old work, which honestly isn't that often, but seeing what things I used to be inspired by re-inspires me for those things. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I will be back next Wednesday with my next video, so I'll see you guys then.